It's time for Northwestern Outdoors Radio, the award-winning show that covers fishing, hunting, and all sorts of outdoor recreation here in the Great Northwest. Northwestern Outdoors is brought to you every week by Mack's Lure Company, a legacy of innovation since 1969, by Loophole Optics, America's optical authority, by Camp Chef, the way to cook outdoors,
by Wallowa County.
Nature is on display in Northeast Oregon, and by The Real News, your fishing resource. Also by Shiloh Inns and Suites, providing you with affordable excellence. And by Mardon Resort, the place for fishing, hunting, and more in Eastern Washington. And now, it's time to head outside with your host, John Cruz.
We're starting off our broadcast this week by welcoming a brand new affiliate aboard, the mighty 580 KANA. They broadcast out of Anaconda, Montana to not only this great town, but also to the communities of Deer Lodge and Butte. We are really excited about sharing the outdoors with listeners in Southwest Montana every Friday between noon and 1 p.m. because there's a lot of great trout fishing to be done in this part of the Treasure State. One person who knows all about this is Chris Bradley at the StoneFly Fly Shop in Butte. We'll be talking to him about what streams to fish this fall and what tactics to use to draw a strike from a hefty rainbow or brown trout later in the show. What else do we have coming up? Well, it being October, we've got a good amount of cast and blast news coming your way, to include some good opportunities to hunt deer in north central Washington, a promising forecast for steelhead anglers in Idaho, and great news for racer clam diggers in both Oregon and Washington. However, it's not only a time to talk about fishing and hunting, but also conservation. There's been a lot of good work going on in recent years throughout the Northwest to restore salmon runs, and Native American tribes, in many cases, have been in the forefront of that effort. We'll be talking to Kat Brigham with the Columbia River Intertribal Fish Commission this week about some success stories coming from rivers in Idaho, Washington, and Oregon that have salmon swimming back upstream in big numbers. And with fall here, politics are also in the air. In Washington State, there are a couple of gun initiatives on the ballot that are really important to know about and to vote on, especially if you support your Second Amendment right to keep and bear arms. Alan Gottlieb with Protect Our Gun Rights will be joining us in just a few moments to break down both Initiative I-594 and I-591. But before we go any further, we've got another edition of Sportsman Spotlight for you. David Sparks does a great job with this segment, airing on our show courtesy of the Northwest Ag Information Network. Sportsman Spotlight is brought to you every week by Shiloh Inn and Suites, the hotel chain that lives up to its motto of affordable excellence. This week, David goes deeper into the topic of elk calling, something you'll want to know about if you are hunting for a bull this fall.
Getting your bull to come in with a bugle or a cow call? David Sparks, Sportsman Spotlight. Elk hunters, here's a question. If you're wanting to get a nice big bull, what do you use, a cow call or a bugle? The answer, in the minds of a lot of my hunter friends, is both. A cow call does not threaten the bull. If you can get a bull to answer with a cow call, and he's aggressive and loves what he hears, and that probably is what you should stay with. Sometimes you can get a bull going with a cow call. They'll answer, but then they'll just hang. In those circumstances, you might try going with a bugle. It's challenging, it's aggressive, it's obnoxious, it's in his face, and he doesn't want to hear it. You might try a high-pitched, non-threatening bugle, which can be very aggravating to the bull that you're looking for. Listen to this. Very important not to intimidate, just to aggravate and challenge. I asked Sportsman's Warehouse sales associate Brandon Lobo what his preference was. He gave me a suggestion as well as a note of caution.
That would be like a bugle, and that takes a mouth read, and that takes a lot of practice. That takes practice because once you're out in the field, you have to just do it instinctively. You can't screw up once. If you screw up once, well, generally they're going to know it's not real, So you can look up plenty of YouTube videos on saying, how to run a mouth read for a bugle elk and all that kind of stuff.
Brandon's right. I checked on YouTube, and there are tons of videos. This is David Sparks for Sportsman Spotlight.
Confused by so many national brand hotel reward programs? Blackout dates, expiration dates, different points for different hotel rewards, and gimmicks? At Shiloh Inn Suites Hotels, it's simple. No blackout dates for any rewards stay. If we have a room available, it's yours. Hi, I'm Mark Hemstreet, owner of Shiloh Inns. As a rewards member, you'll receive free room upgrades, a dedicated personal agent to help book your stay, points that don't expire, Points that can be used for free nights at any one of our beautiful hotels or donations to your local school or free airline tickets and much more. And as a special bonus, you'll earn 100 free bonus points just for signing up. From your very first stay, you receive free Wi-Fi, free breakfast at most locations. The kids stay free. We don't charge ridiculous resort or parking fees, and we're dog-friendly. Shiloh Inn's affordable excellence. American-owned and proud of it.
I'd like to tell you I just brought down that buck, but I didn't. I missed. And you know why I missed? Because of the scope I've got on my rifle. You see, my friends told me to get a Leupold rifle scope. Why? Well, because Leupold is America's optical authority. They make a huge variety of quality scopes for every need, and they make them right here in the Northwest. Unfortunately, I didn't listen. I used the cheap scope that came with this rifle when I bought it. And when it came time to pull the trigger, well, let's just say things were a little blurry. Now, I've got nothing to look forward to except a long, empty-handed walk back home. Next time I come out into the field, there's going to be a Leupold scope on my rifle. And next time, I'm not going to miss.
Leupold rifle scopes. Check out the whole line at leupold.com and look for them at a sporting goods store near you.
You're back with Northwestern Outdoors Radio. It's election time in our country, and there's a couple of opposing initiatives on the ballot in Washington State that have the ability to really affect your gun rights, whether you are a present or future owner of a firearm. With us here to tell us more about Initiative 591 and Initiative 594 is Alan Gottlieb, the chairman of Protect Our Gun Rights, urging people to vote yes on I-591. Alan, welcome to the show.
Hey, it's great to be with you.
Alan, let's go ahead and break down these dueling initiatives one at a time. And we'll start with the one you're behind and urging voters to vote yes on, Initiative 591. If enacted into law, what will I-591 do?
Well, it's a very simple initiative. It only has two clauses to it. The first clause is that the state shall confiscate no one's firearms without due process of law. And the second clause is that the state shall enforce no background check that doesn't meet a uniform national standard. Two simple clauses that every voter can understand and know what it means.
So does this change the way that law enforcement is currently doing business with background checks and the few times that they do confiscate guns, usually in domestic violence or mental health cases?
No, it would not, because in those cases it's really not confiscation. They're taking temporary possession of a firearm to defuse a situation or because they needed this evidence in a case, which is due process when they go to court. So it doesn't roll back any background checks at all. It doesn't change any way the law enforcement works on anything right now. And that's one of the main reasons why over 7,500 law enforcement officers in Washington State, police and sheriffs, are supporting Initiative 591. And it's the only initiative that has been endorsed by law enforcement organizations in our state, including the Washington State Firearms Law Enforcement Traders Association and the biggest and oldest group in the state of Washington, the Washington Council of Police and Sheriffs, WACOP, with over 100 local member agencies, law enforcement agencies, as members of the group. So we're overwhelmingly supported by law enforcement and the only group that really is, the only initiative that really is.
All right. Well, that's really good to know. And I think a lot of voters out there are probably wondering about that very fact. What does law enforcement think of it? So it's good to know that law enforcement, especially these groups, are behind I-591. Let's go to the other side of the coin, so to speak, Initiative 594. What is this one all about, and why are you urging folks to vote no on I-594?
Well, I-594 is proposed as an increase in a background check initiative, but the truth of the matter is it goes far beyond increasing background checks on gun sales, and that creates a problem. It's also an unfunded mandate that diverts scarce law enforcement resources away from fighting violent crime, which is, again, why all these law enforcement organizations endorsed 591 and are opposing 594. The initiative, while it talks about background checks, in the fine print, it's 19 pages of really excessive regulations that are very hard to understand. In fact, before you vote for it, you should read all 19 pages and maybe consult your attorney to find out how it might criminalize your behavior. You know, to give you an example, if you wanted to loan, not sell, but loan your firearm to your sister-in-law overnight for self-protection, you'd be creating a criminal act. If you wanted to loan your friend or neighbor your rifle or shotgun to go hunting or skeet shooting, you'd be committing a criminal act. If you were a law enforcement officer, and wanted to loan your private backup gun to a fellow officer either on duty or off duty, you'd be committing a crime. If you lent it to two people, you'd be committing a felony. And there's lots of problems the way this initiative is written, and we've tried to point that out. It also hurts firearm safety training, because if you're not doing firearm safety training directly at a gun range, you can't even hand a person or transfer your gun to another person to learn how to handle it. There are all kinds of problems with 594. It's not that we're against background checks or expanding background checks. It's just if you're going to do it, you have to do it in a way that makes sense. And more importantly, John,
go on.
One of the big problems is that it increases and creates a universal registration database in the state of Washington for every handgun in the state. Because every time you would transfer or sell a handgun, you'd end up going into a state database, which exists now for sales through dealers, but it would now expand it to every handgun in the state of Washington. And of course, our opponents, people who don't support gun rights, want a registration list, because without it, there's no way you can confiscate guns, which is the important section of 591, which stops confiscation without due process, and how it ties the two together.
This sounds like an incredibly, well, let me rephrase this. This sounds like a very poorly written ballot initiative, or it's very cleverly written, and the whole idea is to basically get guns out of people's hands or make it so onerous to possess them or to give them to others that you don't dare do so. It's basically an anti-gun initiative, isn't it?
Yes, and I'm not sure it was poorly written. I believe it was written in New York, quite frankly, by former Mayor Michael Bloomberg's attorneys who wrote the initiative and weren't familiar with some of Washington state laws, which it conflicts with, and it also has some problems for gun dealers in how it implements, because they have to comply with federal laws as federally licensed firearms dealers, and it creates some conflicts there as well. It also, by the way, it doubles the state waiting period for a handgun or purchase of a handgun if you don't have a concealed pistol license. It doesn't tell you that in the title.
Wow. Folks, we are talking to Alan Gottlieb. He's the chairman of Protect Our Gun Rights. We're talking about Initiative 591 and currently about Initiative 594 and why you may well want to vote no on I-594. Something else two things I think we should touch on when it comes to I-594. Number one, the myth that extended or expanded background checks will cut down crime. And I think all you have to do is look at places like Chicago and Washington, D.C., and New York City, which have, well, some people would say draconian laws regarding gun possession and gun rights, and it hasn't made a dent at all. As a matter of fact, some would say these places are worse than other cities that don't have these expanded background checks.
Yeah, that's really true. I don't oppose expanded background checks if it's done in a way that protects gun owner privacy and public safety at the same time. Unfortunately, 594 flunks that test. But when you take a look at gun control schemes like 594, which, by the way, far exceeds any background check done in any of the other 49 states, one of the problems is that the way these things work is criminals, or criminals by nature, who break laws, aren't going to obey this anyway.
Right.
And it's already illegal for them to have a gun to begin with. People who have already committed violent acts and felonies aren't allowed to own a firearm to start with. So this isn't going to work. All it's going to do is hurt law-abiding, legitimate citizens exercise their constitutional rights and use firearms for legitimate purposes.
Another thing we need to point out about I-594, there's a lot of very rich people who are contributing some huge sums of cash. Who are some of these people?
Yeah, this is very disturbing because it's almost like somebody's trying to buy the election, buy away your rights.
Absolutely.
I mean, almost all the money raised by the 594 people are raised from billionaires making, six-figure and seven-figure donations to it. You've got Michael Bloomberg, who's given $1 million to one initiative. He doesn't even live in the state. And then you've got, Bill Gates, who's given $1 million, and Paul Allen, who's given $600,000, and Steve Ballmer, who's given now I think it's $750,000, and Nick Hanauer, who's given I think $1 million or $1.4 million. When you take a look at that, it gets kind of scary. Why is a group of people living in a small number of zip codes in the city around Seattle spending millions of dollars on this, with the exception of Bloomberg, of course, who lives out of state and can't even vote on the initiative?
All right. This, again, you're right. Disturbing. We could talk a lot more about that, but we need to move on because, unfortunately, we're running out of time in a hurry. Really quick, what happens if both initiatives pass?
Well, first of all, if initiatives pass, the legislature is not allowed to change them for 2 years, which creates a big problem with 594 passing because all the problems in it cannot be fixed. If 591 passes, it forces, hopefully, the court to say to the legislature, okay, they both passed, now you have mandated to fix the problems. So if you don't vote for 591 and 594 passes, the problem is the problems cannot be fixed. So that's why it's doubly important to vote for 591.
And if both initiatives fail, I presume we're status quo, we stay with our current laws.
We stay with our current laws, and the legislature then could deal with the situation of trying to write a background check bill that would make more sense.
Alan, we are out of time, but let's direct people to a website to find out more about I-591 voting yes and I-594 voting no.
Well, it's easy. Yeson591.org and 594badlaw.org.
That's easy enough. Alan, thanks for breaking it down for us on Northwestern Outdoors Radio.
My pleasure.
We are the young minds that will shape tomorrow's world. But today, the world is in your hands. What's your vision for the future? Ducks Unlimited has had the same vision for over 75 years. A future with clean water, abundant wildlife, and plenty of places to enjoy nature. Ducks Unlimited, working for conservation for generations to come.
For 25 years, The Real News has been covering the Northwest fishing scene. Written for anglers by anglers, The Real News does not shy away from the tough issues. You can pick up your copy of The Real News at select sporting good retailers or have it mailed to your home. Just go to therealnews.com for details. As an added bonus, let them know what radio station you heard this ad on when you subscribe, and you'll get a vinyl Real News fish sticker valued at $6 as a special gift. Subscribe today at therealnews.com.
We're back with John Cruz on Northwestern Outdoors Radio.
It's time for another Mack's Minute.
Fish on!
With Mack's Lure Company, with us here today is Mack's pro staffer, Wes Malmberg. He's also the author of The Fly Fisher's Guide to Western Washington Lakes. Wes spends a lot of time on our lowland lakes, even in the winter, catching trout. Wes, what do you like to use, and how do you use the lure that you do use to catch fish?
I like to use the Mack Smile Blade flies, and if I can't find them, I like to use a woolly bugger. I'll take the blade, it's a .08 blade, I'll slide it up my leader, put on a small 5mm bead, and then I'll tie on my woolly bugger.
So you're basically using a small smile blade, the little mylar blade, putting it right in front of the woolly bugger, or just getting the smile blade fly made by Mack's Lure. How do you actually fish it? Are you fishing from a float tube, a rowboat? How do you like to do it?
No, I'm fishing from my 12-foot aluminum boat, and I troll it. I use a full sink fly line, 6-weight, type 6, class 6. And I'll use about 8-9 foot a leader, 6-pound Iser line, and I'll work the lake that way. And the trout just slam it.
One more thing, when it comes to fishing, especially west of the Cascade Mountains in Washington and Oregon, how deep are you going? How deep do you troll?
Well, you know, most of the lakes over here on the west side are about 25 feet deep. So they're always constantly, pretty much year-round, hanging in 4 to 12 feet of water, and that's what I'm working.
Last but not least, when it comes to speed, how fast?
I figure about 1.5. I don't change my speed. If I have to slow down, I'll just make a long curve S in my boat trolling pattern. The sharper the turn, the deeper it goes.
That's Wes Malmberg, folks, with this week's Mack's Minute, suggesting you use a smile blade fly or a smile blade in front of your fly, found only at Mack's Lure Company.
Looking to leave the world behind? Then escape to Northeast Oregon's Alpine Country, Wallowa County. With over 560 miles of trails and 60 high mountain lakes, the Eagle Cap Wilderness beckons you to explore. The deep glacial waters of Wallowa Lake call you to fish for record kokanee in the Hells Canyon, North America's deepest river canyon, lures you to experience the wild waters of Snake River. Wake up to the world of Wallowa County. Your morning begins at WallowaCountyChamber.com.
It's a great time to go fishing, and whether you're heading to the lake for trout, to the saltwater for salmon, or fishing the Columbia for Chinook or steelhead, The Real News has got you covered. The columnists at The Real News are just like you, die-hard anglers. Better still, they share their expertise to help you have a great time on the water. The Real News has been going strong for 26 years and prides itself on being Washington's only sport fishing newspaper. Look for your copy at local sporting goods retailers or subscribe online at therealnews.com.
At Shiloh Inn Suites Hotels, 4-star accommodations come with something else you'll really appreciate: affordability. Hello, I'm Mark Hemstreet, owner of Shiloh Inns. Relax in Shiloh's beautiful deluxe smoke-free suites. Enjoy Shiloh's spacious pools, spas, steam, and sauna rooms. At Shiloh Inn Suites Hotels, we're making 4-star excellence affordable with more free amenities than most any other hotel chains. For reservations, call 1-800-222-2244 or visit our website at shilohins.com. Shiloh Inns, affordable excellence.
You're back with Northwestern Outdoors Radio. I'm John Cruz. Next up, we're going to be talking about salmon. And a lot of people have been driving home the fact that salmon populations over the last 100 years have gone way, way down, and something has to be done. But one group is taking a serious lead in bringing these salmon back, and it's the Native American tribes here in the Northwest. With us here to tell us more about it is Kat Brigham. She is on the Board of Trustees for the Confederated Tribes of the Umatilla Indian Reservation, and she also works with another group. Kat, tell us about that group and what it's doing.
The group I work with is the Columbia River Intertribal Fish Commission, and the commission is made up of 4 tribes, which is the Warm Springs Tribe of Oregon, the Confederated Tribes of the Umatilla Indian Reservation of Oregon, the Yakima Tribe of Washington, and the Nez Perce Tribe of Idaho. And what we're doing is working real hard to rebuild our salmon runs in the Columbia River Basin. And if you look at the tributaries for those 4 tribes, it's pretty much the Columbia River Basin. And what we want to do is to rebuild our salmon runs, so we're protecting our tribal treaty rights so that we can fish in all of our usual and custom places. And so we've really worked together, and tribes have taken leads in their area. I mean, like the Clearwater River for coho restoration, Nez Perce tribe is taking the lead in rebuilding the coho in the Clearwater. And for the Walla Walla River, which is in the state of Washington, the Umatilla tribe is taking the lead in rebuilding Spring Chinook in the Walla Walla River. And then also for the Methow and the Wenatchee rivers, it's the Yakima Nation. And so each of us have an interest in rebuilding these salmon runs, and each of us take the lead, but we also work together through the Columbia River Intertribal Fish Commission to get technical assistance to help us to rebuild these naturally spawning fish. And it's really important to say naturally spawning fish simply because we want these fish to come back to the tributaries, not to a hatchery. Because if they go to a hatchery, they're stopping at that hatchery. Whereas if they go to the tributaries, they're going beyond the hatchery so that they can go spawn in the tributaries, and they will come back, as naturally spawning fish. So our motto has always been put the fish back so that we can rebuild them. And we recognize that when we're putting fish back, we're going to rebuild salmon runs that not only tribal people are going to harvest, but non-tribal people, because we have court cases that says 50% of that harvest will be harvested by the tribes and by non-Indians. And so that's how we recognize, and we're not objecting to it. We support it simply because the Pacific Northwest salmon are important to everybody.
Oh, I agree completely. And what I want to do next is actually break down some of the efforts on each of these rivers. And I guess we'll start off with the Clearwater. What's the Nez Perce tribe doing on the Clearwater River to go ahead and bring back the coho salmon?
Putting the fish back. They're doing a lot of, they're putting coho back. It went extinct in the 80s, and now they're putting the fish back into the tributaries so that they're rebuilding them. In 1994, there was no fish, and now in 2011, the run has gone up above 5,000.
Wow, that is incredible. And that's just through basically having brood stock and releasing them in the river and then just migrating back over the years. It's been as simple as that.
What we call it is supplementation, is where we put the brood stocks in the water where we want them to come back to. And so they are implanted, and this is where they get their sense of smell to come back to that tributary. So they are then returning to that tributary so that they are then spawning naturally.
You're listening to Northwestern Outdoors Radio. We're talking to Kat Brigham. She's with the Columbia River Intertribal Fish Commission, and we're talking about the tribal efforts to restore fish here in the Northwest, salmon in particular. So we've just talked about the Clearwater River and coho restoration. Let's go ahead and talk about the Methow and Wenatchee rivers. We're talking about coho restoration. Until recently, coho were not a salmon that were seen in recent memory in either one of those streams.
No, we haven't. In 1997, the Methow, we didn't have any coho there, and in 1999, in the Wenatchee, we didn't have any coho there. But with the Yakima Nation taking the lead, putting coho back into these tributaries, again, we've gone above 5,000 in the Methow and over 20,000, almost 25,000 in the Wenatchee. Wenatchee. So this can be done by putting salmon back into the tributary so they can spawn naturally. And that's always been the tribal goal, is to put the fish back so that they can spawn naturally and return to the tributary so we can all go fishing.
The Wenatchee in particular is a huge, huge success story. Again, folks, we're looking at over 20,000 fish that returned in 2011, and that was also a time when, for the first time in anybody's memory, at least since the 1980s, you could go fishing for coho salmon on the Wenatchee. It was a big joy for not just tribal anglers, but non-tribal anglers as well. Moving on to the Walla Walla River Spring Chinook reintroduction. Tell me more about that story.
This is a tributary that we haven't had any fish back for 100 years. We started outplanting in 2000, and in 2010, we actually had a fishery on the Walla Walla River, which we haven't had for 100 years. And since then, the fish are going up a little bit more, and we're still working to rebuild our naturally spawning spring Chinook in the Walla Walla Basin. And there's a lot of local support, and I think that's important to say for all of these tributaries. There's a lot of local support to say we want the fish back. And farmers are beginning to step up and say, okay, what do we need to do to protect fish and improve water quality? But at the same time, they're saying, if we're going to be doing this thing, how are we going to get our fish back if the states and the tribes are not, and quite frankly, they've asked the tribes to take the lead in putting some of these fish back simply because we're not getting as much cooperation as we need from the states and the federal agencies.
Fascinating success stories right here in the Northwest, in Washington, Oregon, and Idaho. It's the Columbia River Intertribal Fish Commission. They're taking the lead in bringing salmon back to several of our rivers here in the Northwest, and I know that's just scratching the surface on what you're doing. So keep up the good work. Is there a website where people can go to find out more about the great work that's being done here?
Yes, we have the Columbia River Intertribal Fish Commission, and it's www.critfc.org.
That's CRITFC.org. That's CRITFC.org for the Columbia River Intertribal Fish Commission. Kat, thanks so much for taking the time to tell us about all of this on Northwestern Outdoors Radio.
Thank you for being interested. We appreciate that.
In other conservation-related news, Idaho Fish and Game is seeking the public's help to solve a poaching case that occurred in Valley County. Someone used an arrow to kill a spike bull in Mace Meadows and left it to rot during the weekend of September 27th and 28th. Fish and Game Officer Matt O'Connell says there's always at least one witness to events of this nature. I'm hoping that a witness will do the right thing and let us know what happened with this elk. If you are that witness, or if you know anything about this case, do the entire hunting community a favor and call Citizens Against Poaching. You can remain anonymous and possibly get a reward as well. The number to contact is 1-800-632-5999. That's 1-800-632-5999 for Citizens Against Poaching, and you can call them 24 hours a day. Don't turn that dial. We're coming right back with field reports that cover a whole gamut of cast and blast opportunities throughout the Great Northwest.
Looking for the ultimate cooking machine for your backyard or patio? Look no further than Camp Chef's new pellet grill and smoker. With user-friendly features like an auto ignition, digital readouts, and internal meat temperature sensors, it's easy to smoke the tastiest salmon, ribs, brisket, and turkey you'll ever eat. And an innovative system makes cleanup a snap. Everyone will want the food you're cooking on your Camp Chef pellet grill and smoker. The quality smoker that's second to none. Find out more at campchef.com. Camp Chef, the way to cook outdoors.
Leupold has been building optics in Oregon since 1907, and Leupold binoculars bring excellent optical performance and modern styling to the serious outdoorsman. Whether you're a boater, birder, backpacker, or hunter, Leupold's state-of-the-art binocular lines are sure to fit your needs. Visit Leupold.com or your local Cabela's, Bi-Mart, or Sportsman's Warehouse to see the full line of Leupold optics.
I'm Bob Loomis, and I fish for walleye. Sometimes when I'm out on the water, I feel like a destroyer captain hunting for targets with my electronics. I'm not hunting submarines, though. I'm hunting fish, and when I find that big one on the fish finder, I want to make sure she's going to bite. That's where the Smile Blade Slow Death Rig from Mack's Lure comes in. The Smile Blade spins and flashes at ultra-slow speeds, and the one-of-a-kind red hook keeps that bait moving in a way the fish can't resist. It's the Smile Blade Slow Death Rig. You're the destroyer. This is your depth charge. Only from Mack's Lure.
Psst.
Yeah, you, the guide, outfitter, or outdoors business owner who's listening to Northwestern Outdoors Radio. Have you ever thought of becoming a sponsor of our show? We've got local sponsor opportunities at all 50 of the stations that carry Northwestern Outdoors every week, and we've got some network opportunities too. If the outdoors is your business, we can help you with your advertising needs. Contact me, John Cruz, through our website at northwesternoutdoors.com. That's northwesternoutdoors.com, helping you get the word out about your outdoors company. You're back with Northwestern Outdoors Radio. It's time again for news and reports from the field, brought to you every week by Mardon Resort at Eastern Washington's Potholes Reservoir. It's October. That means it's cast and blast time. Think about it. You can head over to Mardon Resort, hunt ducks and pheasant in the morning, fish for bass and walleye in the afternoon, and then relax at the resort in the evening. And what do you do the next day? Repeat. That's right. Do it all over again. Find out more about a cast and blast getaway at Eastern Washington's premier fishing and hunting resort. That's mardonresort.com. mardonresort.com, where the fish bite, but we don't. The general deer hunting season opens up this weekend in both Idaho and Washington, and a lot of hunters are wondering how things are going to be in north central Washington's Okanagan County, where the state's largest recorded wildfire burned a huge swath of mule deer winter range. Well, the winter may be tough, but the hunting promises to be good this fall. Matt Monda, the regional wildlife manager there, says the department will issue more special hunting permits to help reduce the number of deer to a level that the remaining winter range can support. The goal is to reduce the herd of 14,000 mule deer by 7%. You can't buy these permits over the counter. Instead, they're going to be issued to hunters who have already applied and who may have been unsuccessful in getting them the first time around. By the way, if you go, bring a salmon or steelhead rod with you when the season is open. The fishing can be excellent in this county for both species. In northwest Oregon and southwest Washington, razor clammers are, well, about as happy as the clams they can now start digging up. The Clatsop beaches in Oregon opened up October 1st, and the digging should be great. This year's survey by the Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife revealed an estimated 16 million, that's right, 16 million tasty razor clams in the 18-mile stretch of beach between the South Jetty on the Columbia River and Tillamook Head. That is a whole lot of chowder. Meanwhile, in southwest Washington, fall and winter digs have been scheduled, and you can expect to see clammers digging away with headlamps during the evening low tides this weekend at Long Beach, Twin Harbors south of Westport, and Mock Rocks near Mo Cliffs, and again during the week of the 22nd through the 28th. You can find out more about razor clamming and the regulations too at both the Oregon and Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife websites. In Idaho, steelhead numbers are picking up on the Snake River, and it should be a banner year for big metalheads on the Clearwater. That's the word from Idaho Fish and Game, which reports the number of steelhead coming into Idaho is increasing as counts over Lower Granite Dam have been in the thousands for more than a week. During the 4-day period, ending on Sunday, September 28th, the average count at Lower Granite was right around 5,000 fish per day. This year's total is just slightly less than the 10-year average for the end of September, but is well ahead of last year's count. What really ought to get you excited, though, is the B-Run Steelhead Run, which is forecast to come in at 126% of original predictions. B-Run Steelhead generally arrive later and are much larger than A-Run Steelhead. How much bigger? Well, let's put it this way. 20 pounds worth of big fish. That's a lot of steelhead. Many of these fish will be heading up the Clearwater River, and I suspect anglers will be ready for them in places near Lewiston and Orofino as they show up in good numbers in the coming weeks. Next up on Northwestern Outdoors Radio, to celebrate our new affiliate, 580 KANA out of Anaconda, which also broadcasts to Butte and Deer Lodge, we thought we'd head over to that area, and we're talking to Chris Bradley with the StoneFly Fly Shop. They're located at 2205 Amherst in Butte, Montana. Chris, it's October now. Let's go ahead and talk about fishing on some of the streams around there. Where would you recommend people go to get into some trout?
Well, fall is an exciting time to be fishing around here. The rivers are generally quite a bit less crowded, and the fishing certainly picks up. The Big Hole River, Upper Clark Fork, and Jefferson are three really good options that are right in our immediate area.
Let's go ahead and break those down a little bit more. Going river by river, what kind of fish are you going to find in each one? And let's talk a little bit about size as well. How big do some of these trout get?
For those, the rivers around here, your average fish, probably falls into that 14 to 16 inch window with plenty more larger than that you see regularly. Pretty even split between browns and rainbows, and the populations shift depending on stretch of the river and things like that. But it's a pretty even mix between browns and rainbows.
Well, sounds like a slice of heaven to me, Chris. Let's go ahead and talk tactics, because I'm guessing that some of those things that people were doing during the summer months are not going to be so effective now that the water's cooling.
That's absolutely correct. You see in the transition, you still have some dry fly opportunities, the emergence of the October caddis and the blue-winged olives. So the dry fly guy still gets a window that he can do his thing. And primarily, nymphing and streamer fishing are definitely going to be your most productive ways to fish.
There's those two fly competitions that go on around the nation. If somebody was going to walk into the shop, say, I'm going to fish the beaverhead, the upper Clark Fork, and the big hole this week, give me the two flies I need, what would you give them?
It's going to vary a little bit when you break it down between the tailwater fisheries and your freestone rivers. Your freestones, a stonefly nymph and a San Juan worm, something like that. A lot of the real basic type flies do a great job throughout the fall. The tailwater fisheries, you can't go wrong with the good old San Juan worm, but the scuds and smaller pheasant tails do a great job on the tailwater fisheries.
All right, so now, folks, you know what you need to have success out there, and boy, those sound like some great trout. Let's go ahead and talk a little bit about the StoneFly Fly Shop. Again, you're located at 2205 Amherst in Butte. Are you open 7 days a week?
6 days a week. Still closed on Sundays for fishing.
I think that's more than fair. So let's give folks a website, too, so they can find out more and maybe go ahead and drop by and buy some flies before they hit the river. Oh,
that sounds great. It's just thestonefly.com, and we're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all that good stuff, too.
All right, that's thestonefly.com for the StoneFly Fly Shop in Butte, Montana. Chris, thanks for sharing this great information with us on Northwestern Outdoors Radio.
Absolutely. Thanks for the call. We appreciate it.
In other news, members of the outdoors media, including myself, are both concerned and outraged about a proposed permanent rule that will require us to go ahead and get permits before we can either film or even take pictures, even using a cell phone to take pictures on Forest Service land. Tom Tidwell, who is the chief of the U.S. Forest Service, says this is just an effort to go ahead and limit damage to wilderness areas from big film production companies. However, there has been a lack of consistency with the Forest Service in terms of applying this. As a matter of fact, there have been several outlets and members of the outdoors media who have been ordered to get permits and sometimes had to wait a lengthy amount of time before they were approved, before they could just walk onto public land and go ahead and do the same thing that any of you could do, which is take a picture or go ahead and film a video without going through a process that would include the Forest Service basically saying yay or nay on the projects that you are trying to do. The whole thing reeks of censorship. The whole thing reeks of a breach of our First Amendment rights to go ahead and bring you news and photos and video about what's happening on your public lands. This is still open for comment, and you can go ahead and contact the U.S. Forest Service and let them know what you think about it. A lot of us have. A lot of us are not happy, and I hope that they reverse this decision and make this a rule that makes some sense as opposed to the one that currently doesn't. We're going to transition away from our outdoors news with a little music from our friend Dusty Klink. You can go ahead and listen to him summer evenings at Klink's Resort at Williams Lake in Eastern Washington. Great musician. And don't you turn that dial, because we're going to be right back to cover some upcoming events taking place in the Northwest that you're not going to want to miss.
When I first made the change, things are kind of rough. I stuck to my guns when the times got tough. I met good people who like to help.
The road is calling you to experience one of Oregon's 7 wonders, the Wallowas. So grab your camping equipment and fishing gear and head out to Northeast Oregon, where you'll find the views are endless, the air crisp and clean, and the water's cold and clear. Set up camp by the shores of Wallowa Lake or in the heart of the Wallowa-Whitman National Forest. Take your fishing gear and cast your bait into the deep waters of Wallowa Lake, or roll your fly into one of the eddies of the many freestone creeks and rivers teeming with fish. This summer, take the road that leads to wonders. It begins at WallowaCountyChamber.com.
The off-season is a great season to visit Mardon Resort. Located in eastern Washington's Columbia Basin, you'll find incredible bird hunting, great wildlife watching opportunities, and fantastic fishing in a boat or right off the marina docks at Mardon Resort. Better still, off-season deals save you money when you bring your RV or stay in the hotel or wonderful park cottages. To find out more, log on to MardonResort.com. Mardon Resort, where the outdoor fun lasts all year long.
Good hunters know before you take that shot, you've got to see the whole picture. Now, the best way to do that is with a spotting scope, binoculars, or a rifle scope, but it's got to be from Leupold. Now, Leupold is a Northwest company with a reputation that stretches across the world for making superior optics. Look for Leupold Optics at your local Cabela store, Dick's Sporting Goods, or online at Leupold.com. Leupold, America's optical authority.
When it comes to camping, I like to relax, but I was getting stressed about camp cooking. Then I discovered the Camp Chef Portable Outdoor Oven. This junior-sized oven works with a small propane bottle and is perfect for family camping trips. With a matchless ignition, heating up to 400 degrees, and space to put a 9x13-inch pan, I can cook cinnamon rolls for breakfast, casseroles for dinner, and pie for dessert. Look for the Portable Outdoor Oven at a store near you or online at campchef.com. Camp Chef, the way to cook outdoors.
Oh, honey, it sure is a beautiful day to be out on the water.
It sure is. And you know what? I've got something special for you today.
You do?
Yep. It's a wedding ring. It's gold, it's pretty, and it hangs on and won't let go.
Oh my gosh, honey, I love you.
I love you too, babe. Here you go.
But that's a fishing lure.
Well, of course it is. It's a Mack's wedding ring spinner. It's been catching trout, kokanee, walleye, and panfish since 1969. What did you think it was?
I thought it was a wedding ring.
Oh.
Mack's wedding ring spinner. It's a great lure, but maybe they should have named it something else. Look for it wherever you buy sporting goods.
You jerk!
We're back with one last cast from John Cruz on Northwestern Outdoors Radio.
Let's run through some upcoming events before we go. If you're looking for something to do this weekend, the annual Northern Rodeo Association Finals are taking place at the Butte Civic Center in southwestern Montana, both Friday the 10th and Saturday the 11th. If you like watching cowboys, riding broncs and bulls, and roping steers, this ought to be a lot of fun. Find out more at northernrodeo.com. A family elk hunting workshop is going to be offered by the Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife on October 26th from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. The free event is taking place at the Douglas Ridge Rifle Club in Eagle Creek and is designed for beginners or those who just haven't hunted elk in a long time. You'll learn all the basics about elk hunting, and it's open to adults, couples, and families with children who are at least 9 years old. Space is limited, so you'll want to sign up for this one in a hurry. Go to the ODFW website and go to the ODFW Outdoors page for more details. And if you find yourself in southwestern Washington's Grays Harbor County on Saturday the 11th, you may want to head to Pretty Little Schaefer Park in Elma for a 1 p.m. traditional salmon bacon potluck. The salmon will be there for you, along with beverages, but you need to bring some other food to share. There is a suggested $7 donation, and I suspect if you go, you're not going to leave hungry. By the way, if you live in Central Washington, you can now catch our show at a brand new airtime. We are going to start broadcasting Fridays from 6 p.m. to 7, along with our normal airtimes on Saturdays at 4 p.m. and Sundays at 7 a.m. on our flagship station, 560 KPQ in Wenatchee. We got our start at this great station 7 years ago, and we've come away since then, but we are always grateful for the support we've gotten from KPQ and Cherry Creek Radio. You can find out more about our show at northwesternoutdoors.com. You can actually listen to our most recent broadcast there on our front page, and go ahead and check out the links to find out more about our guests. We have a Facebook page too. It's Northwestern Outdoors Radio. Go ahead and like us and follow us because we're always posting information there and photos too that we just can't share on the radio. That's all for this week. Between bird hunting, big game hunting, and last chance fall hiking, biking, and paddling, there's a lot to do outside in October. So until next time, take care, God bless, and make it a point to spend some time outdoors.